This is the art of listening. And as a reminder, our new mission statement. My mission is to remove the blindfolds from your programmed mind and guide you to reclaim control as the dominant creator of your reality. Welcome to another Rise Up with Dragon show. So, here's a couple of thoughts before we get into the art of listening. So, I tried, this is a quote that I heard this morning and it just resonated with me. It's by Avicii, the late, great Avicii. I tried carrying the weight of the world, but I only have two hands. That's an interesting thing to observe. It falls under the category of overwhelm, and overwhelm is one of the hidden barriers, according to Gay Hendricks in The Big Leap. Overwhelm is one of the reasons why we refrain from pushing through tough times. We use that concept. We say, "I'm overwhelmed," but at the same time, it's hard to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders when you only have two hands. So I just find it a fascinating topic, an observation of um, realistic expectations, because we're all goal setting right now. And should you set your goals, dream big, set your goals for something that you don't think you can handle? What's the value of that? Well, it pushes you into the uncomfortable zone where growth takes place, right? So there is value to that, but it also sets you up potentially for failure to do something that you can't do. But then I wonder, do I only have two hands? Meaning, do I have limitations? Because we only have limitations until we break through and, you know, achieve something we didn't think we could achieve, 4-minute mile. And then we start looking at the next thing we can't achieve. So at the end of the day, I think, why not dream big? Why not be excessive? Whatever it is that you value. So, that was my takeaway, is I'm just going to go after everything. But the way that you can do it in a rational way is just, if you're feeling overwhelmed, just make an assessment of the things that you're doing, or the things that you're tolerating, the people that you're interacting with. Just make an assessment of whether or not they serve you. So I encourage you to evaluate your strategy. Remember, what this is about: breaking the chains of or the cycle of insanity, where you try to do something that you did last year that didn't work. So I encourage you to evaluate your strategy and identify if it's effective. Look at the results, check the facts, right? And be careful not to get caught up in this idea that things are going to be different now because of XYZ. I mean, that's what everybody thinks about the phenomenon of New Year's, right? They think, oh, this is my year. And that's cool. That lies in faith and hope, and that's fun. But check the facts. Is it an effective, tool? Are the relationships that you have serving you, are they results oriented and in service of your highest needs? Just check that stuff. And that's how you break the chains or the cycle of insanity. So the art of listening. The most powerful way to communicate with others is to listen. That's one of my biggest life takeaways. And it's very hard because I like to talk. But what I'm saying is the most valuable way to communicate with somebody else is actually to listen with your ears. So how is that? Think about that. To say nothing and only listen. How is that communicating? Well, let's break down the elements. I teach this 1-hour class every Saturday at 10 a.m. for all my coach community, called Communication Breakdown. And we talk about stuff like this. Let's break down, the communication, elements. What is a communication? A communication between two people. So let's look at it. So let's break down the elements of a communication between two people, because a lot of times we don't know what that is. One speaks and one listens, right? So that's the concept. But are you in communication with someone if you're speaking and they're listening, or vice versa, and you don't get a chance to speak? Is that a conversation? It's not a conversation, but it is communication, because you're communicating, right? So let's decipher the difference. Now, if both people speak at the same time, which happens, especially when you have two people that want to speak over one another, if both people speak at the same time, nothing actually gets done. So that would be an ineffective form of communication. However, think about this for a second. This is to bring the value of listening out. If two people did refrained from speaking and just listened, can you see that communication could still take place? So that's one of the observations is it shows that listening is a more effective form of communication in my observation than speaking. Now, speaking is important. A little bit about my take on that. So if two people did not speak and they just listened, because you can play with this today, this is fun. Step into that uncomfortable pause where somebody is forced to say something because you're just listening. It's fun. So if so one can read one another. So if you're curious and interested to learn something, which is what I think communication should be about, because if you don't find yourself curious and interested to learn from somebody that you're speaking to, you're not in communication with them. You're trying to tell them something, right? And if they're not a good listener, you're in trouble. But if you're curious to learn something, you might use your voice. Here's where the voice comes in. You might use your voice to ask a question, but only to then go back and retreat to the concept of listening. So when you're speaking today, try to catch yourself and assess whether or not you're using your voice to ask questions or to make a statement with an exclamation point. This is where we get into trouble is when somebody says something and then our response is our desire to be right, right? And that's when you say, here, this is this. Rather than using your voice, this is a more effective form of communication to trigger more listening on your part. How would you do that? You would ask a question. So questions are the way that we let the person that we're communicating with know that we intend to listen and that we're interested. So there's a difference between being interested versus interesting. So just play with this today. It's a lot of fun. When somebody says something, it's a natural knee-jerk reaction that you'll want to make a statement and validate yourself as being right. Ask a question about what they said and listen more, and you'll make a breakthrough. You'll make a breakthrough today. So can you see how we either speak or listen when interfacing with people and things? So make that observation. If we allow our ego to judge and label, that's another form of speaking. Think about that. You could be speaking in your mind, right? So if your ego rears out and makes a judgment or labels the thing, that's actually what it is that I wrote that here. In fact, that's the birthplace when your ego, when your mind is judging or labeling what somebody said, which is something you could be conscious of. When you see that happen, that's the birthplace for not listening and talking over people. Think about it, right? Why would you talk over someone? It's because something happened in your mind. You heard them say something and you want to be right about it. You want to one up them. So if you can catch yourself doing that, pause it. You can remember the easiest way to do it, cognitive distancing, is when you catch yourself wanting to do that. It's okay, but just say, interesting. I just observed that. Slow that process down, pause, and then ask them a question about what they said and listen some more. That's where the breakthrough is. That's the place that most people don't go, the road less traveled. So if we observe with curiosity and distance ourselves from our egoic structure and desire to be right versus kind, we are actually listening. Now you have become an effective communicator. Now, this could be for relationships, friendships, or business, right? If you have a product or a service that you're selling, and this is my life, right? I'm a coach, I'm a transformation coach, either helping people physically, mentally, or financially, which I don't know what it is that they're looking. So I have to listen, I have to ask questions and find out. Otherwise, all of a sudden, I've become a salesperson. So this is a really, really important concept in my life, and you can use this as well, but you have to pause the egoic structure and desire to be right. And if you screw this up, cut yourself some slack, right? Carry the weight of the world. You only have two hands. So it's about being conscious of your program self and recognizing your true nature to learn and grow. Right now, I'm talking to you and you're listening, right? So I don't know if you were in observation of what's going on right now, but I'm not listening to you. I see people commenting and I see people, on in our Facebook community and on an Instagram saying things. So I'm paying attention and it's part of the communication, but I'm for the most part doing the talking and you're doing the listening. So now we're going to flip the switch. Now it's time for me to bounce the ball to you, right? So I've just made a statement and I've spent X amount of time doing it. It's not my time to bounce the ball to you and listen to what you have to say, proverbially, for the day. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to start listening. And if I don't hear anything, I might ask a question. So just know this, it's my greatest desire. This is what I want the world to know. What do you want the world to know about you? It's my greatest desire to serve you and your greatest desire, your greatest wants, needs, and desires. So now that you know this is the concept of communication. I'm bouncing the ball to you and basically saying, what do you think? And I'm going to retreat back to listening and let you hold the ball and decide what comes next. Now, what's interesting about the ball bouncing is if I bounce the ball and there's a question and I don't get anything back, there's two things I can do. I can wait and listen, or I could create a new ball or take the ball back and say, hey, I just asked you a question and you didn't respond, right? So you get to choose which one you do. My challenge to you today is to listen and be okay with the uncomfortableness of people not saying anything. Do you know what happens if somebody doesn't say anything after you ask them a question? It means they don't want to say anything, right? So if you keep talking, right, you've just made everything about you. Sense? So I love and appreciate you. Yeah, I'm constantly in contemplation of the value of what it is that this show does, and there's so many awesome things. The book is in its final edit. Writing another book called Bring Forth about the ayahuasca experience, and also as a side project, we've taken about 1,000 rise ups that I've done, and we're making these daily affirmation journals, which we might give away to the members area. Anybody that's on our newsletter and joins our members area, which is coming this year. So a lot of exciting things, all structured around my desire. And I get from that to just help other people fulfill their desires. So love and appreciate you. One thing I can tell you is that I'm not going anywhere. So if you learn something today, give it away. That's how it's going to stay. I'm going to be here on a regular basis for these 7:30 a.m. check-ins. So please, find it in your heart to share it with others, and we can build this thing as a movement. So love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day and an amazing year. I'll see you next year.